December 2019 will see big increases to the local broadband packages following a 2-year negotiation between Shaw South Atlantic and the local government. This will be the second increase in 2019, but for the first time in 12 years, the prices are going up. For bronze packages and above, you'll see your monthly megabyte allowance doubling. For starter and light, it'll be going up by 33% and 44% respectively. However, for this to happen, a substantial financial boost was required.
Yes, the government's going to invest £3 million over 3 years in increasing the broadband satellite capacity that we have in the islands, so that in general people will see a doubling of the quota that they're able to have on their packages. There's slightly less for the smaller packages, but there'll also be a small rise in the cost of a package for people to help contribute towards increasing that the capacity.
A government investment was required to allow broadband capabilities to keep moving forward in the islands, with the starter and light packages increasing at no extra cost. Though with the rise in consumer prices for the higher packages, this is the first time since the turn of the century that the person on the street will be paying more. But if the government are already fronting £3 million over 3 years, why should the customer pay an extra 10%?
Proposed a number of options to the government. I think what was quite clear, and we spoke about it in the press conference, is that the capacity costs a certain amount of money, and we've got a certain customer base that we can divide that across. I think in terms of the £1 million investment, effectively the price increase on the larger packages lets the government money go further. So if there hadn't been a price increase, and bear in mind there's been no price increases since 2007, then that government money wouldn't have bought as much bandwidth. By getting the higher end packages to contribute a small increase, that just means that we can all deliver more capacity for the country, and it makes the government's money go further.
No matter the reason, this increase in price will be a cause of concern for local consumers who already pay one of the highest prices per megabyte in the world. Locally, 67% of people subscribe to the higher packages, that is, bronze or above, and will therefore be affected by the price increase, as light and starter package prices remain the same whilst benefiting from an allowance increase. If you don't want to pay the extra cost, there is the option of downgrading, and for some it would be very beneficial. For example, if you're currently subscribed to a silver package, you'll be able to drop down to Bronze Plus. You'll still have more megabytes than you are currently getting, and you'll be paying almost half of the price. Though, with these changes, those subscribed to the bronze package will be in the most difficult position, as dropping down means a decrease in speed, as well as package size.
The trend across the world is that people are using more and more internet. What we really set out to do at the beginning of this review, broadband review, was we wanted unlimited data for everybody, but that was just unaffordable. So we've come back to this, which we hope will go some way to meeting the demands of the consumer in the Falklands, and it's about making the Falklands the right place to live, and about delivering to certainly to the younger generations who are very much more internet savvy than I am. It's delivering to them a bit more like they could achieve elsewhere in the world.
More megabytes doesn't specifically mean greater speed. For those on the packages silver and above, speeds are set to increase from 5 megabits to 7 megabits, not to be confused with megabytes, which measure capacity rather than speed. Despite no change in megabits for the lower packages, speeds are still set to improve, but exactly how does that work?
We're virtually doubling the amount of capacity into the country, so that means even at peak times there's twice as much data. The pipe's twice as big effectively for people to use, so everyone should get more data. One of the things we've done is took a cautious approach with line speed, because we know from the previous big increases we've made, it's some 325% increase in quota over the last few years, that if you increase international capacity, quota and line speed at the same time, if we moved everything equally, people may not notice the difference because the contention ratio, which is the amount of bandwidth shared by the total number of customers using it, wouldn't have really changed. What we've done is suggested to the government, and they've agreed, that we take a more cautious approach. So the higher end packages will have a small increase now, We're not saying we won't increase speeds, but what we want to do is get the bandwidth in, see how customers utilise that, and then we're going to review the data with the government probably in about 6 months' time, or 6 months after the upgrade, and we may do some speed increases then.
An issue facing consumers is the fact that the speeds don't allow them to use up all of their current megabytes, with an alternative solution of a rollover being suggested. However, that doesn't seem to be on the cards.
It's not going to happen, certainly in the short to medium term, because it requires extremely complex billing systems. Typically it's not seen in the broadband network, and I know in many areas of the world broadband's unlimited, so you don't really need to meter it the same way. But effectively you've got to do real-time billing on every single customer in the network. So instead of having half a dozen packages, effectively you could have 1,800, 2,000 individual packages. So you require a sort of disproportionately complex billing system for the number of customers that we have. And typically it's only the very big networks, the sort of BTs, Virgin, Sky size of network with tens of millions of customers, where you see that sort of complex billing solution being deployed. We certainly don't deploy that in our other jurisdictions. And it's almost predominantly exclusively deployed in mobile networks, not fixed networks. So I think the cost of delivering that to such a small customer base would be disproportionate. And any benefit you may have from rolling over your quota would be offset by us having to pass on the cost of such a complex platform to individual users, so it would really negate the benefit.
This increased broadband is going to come through a very similar source, a single satellite, as it was deemed the most sensible, realistic and affordable measure until at least 2023. The option of unlimited broadband through satellite was also explored, but was deemed completely unaffordable. With unlimited broadband through satellites unrealistic, the government and Shaw explored the possibility of a fibre optic cable, which would exponentially increase the speed of internet in the islands. Separate proposals were received from British-based BT and Chile Cable, but with prices quoted in the hundreds of millions of pounds, this option was also marked as completely out of budget. Specialist advisors employed by FIG confirmed that the capacity that would be brought by a subsea cable wouldn't be necessary in the islands for at least 15 years based on population and demand. FIG's £1 million annual investment, as well as the bump of 10% on the consumer's price, is used to purchase greater capacity and increase the speeds coming down from the satellites for the broadband here in the islands. But with technology constantly evolving, how likely is it that this price per unit is going to change, and how much would it possibly affect the deal that we currently have in place?
I think the cost per unit isn't going to decrease over the next 3 years. Clearly there's a lot of new emerging satellite technologies, some of the constellations that we spoke about in the press release with the government, but they're very much dependent on launching new fleets of spacecraft. So what you tend to find is that satellites are launched probably typically once every 10 years. They're launched with a certain technology, certain amount of capability, and they're a very expensive piece of equipment to launch, anything from $500 million to $1 billion per launch. So once that's launched, really that technology that's deployed into space sets the unit cost. There is an element of volume, which we've worked with the government and maximised the volume that we can achieve with their £1 million investment. But the view that costs will come down on a unit basis over the next 3 years isn't correct. And we've actually entered into a 3-year contract both with the government and suppliers to guarantee the current prices for a 3-year period, which gave the best value of money for the government's investment.
There is also a 5-year roadmap plan to upgrade the technology in camp to increase speeds and the network capacity. At least £200,000 a year will be invested into camp improvements, which will see the installation of new technology in 10 sites, as well as upgrades to the current infrastructure already in place. If you take the bronze package as an example, the cost per gigabyte is decreasing from £4 to £2.30 per gig, and the ratio of decline in price per megabyte only gets better as you go up in package. There has been a lot of scrutiny over this deal, but it is undoubtedly a step in the right direction as the islands strive towards increased connectivity at a lower price. It's been Thomas Stockton, FITV.